Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another third stimulus check unemployment benefits extension update, and hope everyone is doing safe and well. So we have really great news to share, and it's highly anticipated. Is that if you guys have been following the news, is that next week will officially be the start of the week when they will now officially be voting on the third stimulus check and third stimulus package, including the $400 unemployment with the PUA and the PUC. All of this is going to be voted inside of the House now. As we've kind of mentioned in a couple of past videos, is that the great news is that they've already officially approved the checks inside of the House, but they are trying to get the entire package all put together. Well, the really great news is that now as we enter into the weekend and transition into next week they will now officially be voting on the entire package, including everything from stimulus checks, unemployment, childcare, tax credit, pandemic relief, testing, reopening schools, the different state, local, basically the entire package is going to be voted on next week. So in today's update, I really just want to keep everyone up to date to talk a little bit about what's going to be happening, where we currently stand in negotiations, what else has to be done, what are the potential things that can kind of come about or happen following this. So basically just everything to really prepare. So we're going to get started right away, but before we begin, make sure you smash the like button in light of a lot of this great news. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification button if you guys are brand new here. Always happy to have new people to join in. Feel free to check out a lot of other videos if you guys are brand new here, where we talk a lot more about unemployment, from like whether or not to reapply, how to call, the $300, arrival dates. They also did officially just release the bill to the stimulus checks part of the third stimulus package. So if you guys are interested, I talk a lot about that in yesterday's video, or the last video, which I believe is literally called qualification. So you guys can check it out to see. It goes a lot more in depth of who actually can physically get the checks and everything related to that situation. And also feel free to comment any questions or thoughts about honestly just really anything at all. It's always great to have a discussion going. Supposedly right now, it's supposed to be like a massive blizzard, and I know right now, I can speak being from New York. In New York right now, my window is basically all like white right now. Like, it's basically just snowed in. I've heard apparently Texas is going through a lot right now. Maybe feel free to comment what it's currently like in your state, because I've heard that the blizzard is starting to turn into ice, if anything, and it's really coming down hard. So if you guys had any stories related to the blizzard or know of any, feel free to share what it's like down there. So with that being said, let's get started. Now, before we begin, I really just want to quickly touch up about the unemployment numbers, because I know some people are interested in it, because it kind of gives perspective into how the unemployment situation is going as like a whole in our country. So we'll take a minute, but basically the unemployment numbers recently did just come out. And I think supposedly about 861,000 people filed for traditional unemployment last week, with a massive increase actually to PUA, where supposedly 516,299, I believe, people filed for the PUA unemployment. So the idea is that we now recently had about 1.3 million people just filed for unemployment last week. And keep in mind that the previous weeks, I believe it was 1.1 million and 1.2. So we're actually going up now even more, especially with the PUA unemployment. And this is really actually important to know, because it really gives in perspective of what the job market really looks like if any of us are eventually, well, likely going to have to look into possibly going back to work eventually, sometime, maybe sooner, just sometime in general. It really puts into perspective what the job market looks like. Now, when it comes to the stimulus checks and the $400 unemployment, the great news is that most of the stimulus checks and the unemployment is basically already ready in terms of the actual text of the bill. What they're currently doing now is that they're really just trying to finalize a lot of the different parts. Now, this week was a little bit of a semi-slower week, only because, as we've kind of mentioned, I think in one or two videos ago, feel free to check that out. But basically, it's that they're currently still on vacation right now. They basically just took a 1-week break because of President's Day. Thankfully, it's not going to be the extenuating break, because keep in mind is that last year, we did have cases where they literally took breaks that were sometimes as long as even like 4 weeks, I think. They literally took a break, I think that was like 3 to 4 weeks long. The great news is that even though they are currently on vacation for President's Day, at least it's only a 1-week break. And I think that they still actually, interestingly, kept some people inside of the House still working to try to finalize the details. The great news is that they are anticipating that basically sometime next week, they will now officially have the entire bill with the text and everything, including every single part. So beyond just the checks and the unemployment, finally put together together into a giant package, finally to get presented into the House and then eventually get voted on. I think the general notice that most people anticipate is that it's probably going to be approved, very likely, inside of the House. The question really becomes inside of the Senate, where there's a lot more uncertainty right now. I think most people believe that inside of the House, it should likely get very, hopefully, much smoother approval, that they likely will finally approve it sometime before the end of next week. Then it's probably going to go to the Senate, and then in the Senate, it's probably going to be a 50-50. I think that of the three stages it has to go through to get approval, the House, the Senate, and then the president's desk, so President Biden, I think they say that it's pretty much going to get approved in the House, and more or less it's pretty much going to get approved on President Biden's desk. I think it's really just the Senate where it's probably going to be a lot more like 50-50 right now, a lot more uncertain. But the brighter news is that a lot of the different parts of the package, including the unemployment, we finally have a lot of great details about it, so we at least have a better idea of what to basically expect from it. I know in yesterday's update I talk a lot more about the qualification side of things, to basically who qualifies for the third stimulus check, and this goes on beyond just the $75K requirement. It talks a lot more about things such as like adult dependents, social security benefits. If you have like a very particular SSI, SSDI, some SSA, some kind of very specific case, definitely check out that video if you guys are interested in seeing who physically qualifies and whether or not you do. But I think that the biggest thing that they're still kind of hesitant, that they're really working on the details right now for, is really about the first is the minimum wage. They are still kind of debating about whether or not they should do the minimum wage, because it really goes both ways. I think that if you happen to be a worker, you guys probably want to increase the minimum wage, but at the same time also, from the perspective of a small business, if they increase the minimum wage, it actually might make it even more difficult for a lot of businesses to really be able to stay around, and they think that the general consequences is that workers would get more money, but it might actually make it so that there's actually physically less jobs now if a lot of businesses just struggle to survive and suddenly have to close, because there's really an argument on both sides. It would be great if they can finally raise the minimum wage, but at the same time, keep in mind is that if they do raise the minimum wage, there will probably be even less jobs that physically exist, which means that the unemployment rate will probably get even higher, or certainly shrink down slower than if more jobs were physically out in the market, so more people can actually physically get employed. But on another note, that might maybe lead to even greater extension for the unemployment program, which some people might actually even prefer as better. And I believe the only other two things that they're really working on right now, I think the second is really about student loans. There is still a debate about whether or not they want to defer student loans. I think Biden is trying to defer up to $10,000. Some of the Democrats want to defer up to $50,000. And then there's other people that just don't want to defer anything at all at this time, and just really just be able to postpone it until some kind of future agreement of some kind to maybe talk about that. And I think really the final thing is that they're really just trying to touch up certain details, especially about like reopening the economy. So for example, like helping kids to get back to school. It's much more about the verbal side, I think, than the actual numerical side. So I think that they're really just trying to work out those details, hoping to finally have it done by something, literally maybe even this weekend, literally just something very soon, so that they can hopefully finally get voted on in the House, and then just go through the typical process that we kind of have already talked about. The only other last thing I will say that I think that they are also working about, and this one's a lot harder to control, but it's really that in order to implement a lot of these different policies, they have to actually run through certain committees. So they're also trying to actually approach different committees to really be able to see if they actually can physically even legally do certain parts of these programs. So for example, like anything that relates to taxes, technically they have to go through the feds. So they can write it inside of the bill. Anything that has to do with the pandemic testing, they also have to technically go through like the health, the country's health department. So for example, like if they want to reopen schools, they technically actually also have to go through a lot of things, like the country's like board of education, the board of education for different states, cities, teachers, schools, unions, all sorts of different things, because it's not just like a one organization thing. They technically have to actually work with a lot of other organizations to make sure that they're actually physically even able to physically do what they're physically trying to do. But that's what I really wanted to share in today's update. So hopefully you guys found some insight to this. Really just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a schedule about what to prepare for as we head into the brand new week next week. So with that being said, if you guys hopefully found something insightful, remember to smash the like button because it always does help to support this channel. Feel free to subscribe, hit the bell notification button for future updates on stimulus, unemployment, and other finance topics. And feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about honestly really just anything at all, even how the weather is doing where you guys are currently at. Feel free to check out other videos where we talk about stimulus and unemployment. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, stay warm, and have an amazing, wonderful weekend. Thank you guys so much again.